The airplane cabin was filled with soft voices, the sound of seatbelts clicking, and the gentle hum of engines warming up. Passengers moved around, putting bags in overhead lockers, finding seats, and settling for the long flight. Flight attendants walked up and down the aisle, giving instructions with friendly smiles. But one flight attendant was not smiling. Her name was Miss Carter, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a stiff expression. She moved like every step annoyed her. Even before the plane took off, people could feel she was not in a good mood. Near the middle of the cabin sat a young boy, only 9 years old. His name was Evan. He looked small in the large airplane seat, wearing a simple blue t-shirt, carrying a worn-out teddy bear. His legs didn't reach the floor and they swung nervously as he waited. Evan was traveling alone. His father, a powerful CEO, had booked the flight for him because of an important business meeting in another city. Evan was supposed to meet him at the airport once the plane landed. Evan wasn't used to flying alone, but his father had told him, "You'll be okay, son. I'll be waiting for you at the other end." Those words replayed in his mind like a soft whisper of comfort. But as soon as Miss Carter noticed the boy sitting alone, something in her eyes changed. Not kindness, not concern, something colder. She walked toward him slowly, stopping by his seat. "What are you holding?" she asked sharply, pointing at the teddy bear. Evan lifted it a little, shyly. My teddy. My mom gave it to me." Miss Carter rolled her eyes. "You're too old for that. Put it away." Evan froze. He didn't want to put it away. It was the only thing that made him feel safe. But he didn't want trouble either. So he placed it on his lap quietly. Miss Carter leaned closer and said in a warning tone, "Keep quiet. Don't bother anyone on this plane." Evan nodded quickly, even though he wasn't doing anything wrong. Some nearby passengers looked over, confused. The boy was quiet and polite. Why was she speaking to him like that? But no one said anything yet. After all, the plane had not even taken off. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the captain announced takeoff. The seatbelt signs blinked. People leaned back and relaxed. But Evan sat stiff, afraid even to breathe loudly. As the airplane slowly moved toward the runway, Miss Carter returned. "Sit straight," she snapped, pulling his seatbelt tighter than necessary. Evan winced in pain. I am sitting straight," he whispered. She didn't care. She kept adjusting his belt roughly, pretending she was helping, but her hands were too harsh for a small child. When she finished, she gave him one last cold look and walked away. Evan's eyes filled with fear, but he didn't cry. He didn't want to make her angrier. The engines roared, the plane lifted, and the flight officially began. But for Evan, it had already become a nightmare. 20 minutes into the flight, Miss Carter passed by again. She looked at Evan's teddy bear still on his lap. "I told you to put that away," she said harshly. "I'm sorry," Evan whispered. "It helps me when I'm scared." "Well, tough," she snapped. "You're disturbing passengers." Evan looked around. No one seemed disturbed. Some were reading, others sleeping, others listening to music. But Miss Carter didn't care. She grabbed the teddy bear from his hands. "Hey!" Evan gasped softly. Miss Carter didn't let him finish. "You need to behave like a big boy on this flight." Evan reached for the teddy bear again, but she pulled it away. "Don't touch it. I'll return it later if you act properly." Evan's hands fell into his lap. His throat tightened. He felt small, powerless. A woman sitting across the aisle frowned. "He wasn't doing anything wrong," she whispered gently. Miss Carter shot her a glare. "Ma'am, I am trained to handle children. Please stay out of it." The woman looked away, scared of causing a scene. Evan slowly looked down at his hands. His fingers shook. He wished his father was here. His father would know what to do. His father always protected him. But right now, Evan was alone. The plane hit a small bump and Evan held the arms of his seat tightly. He wanted his teddy so badly. He felt the pressure of tears building behind his eyes, but he bit his lip to keep them inside. Miss Carter watched him from a distance, her expression unreadable. Then she turned and walked to the back of the cabin. Passengers whispered among themselves now. "Why is she picking on that boy? He's so quiet. Something is wrong." No one knew how bad it was about to get. No one knew Evan would soon struggle to stay awake. No one knew the flight attendant was capable of something darker. And no one knew that far away in another city, a powerful CEO was waiting, completely unaware that his child was suffering in the sky. But when he found out, the entire crew would freeze in fear. Because the moment that plane landed, Evan's father was coming. And he was not coming quietly. The plane had reached a calm point in the sky, and most passengers relaxed. Some watched movies, some talked softly, and others tried to sleep. The gentle sound of the engines made the cabin feel peaceful. But not for Evan. The 9-year-old boy sat frozen in his seat, staring at the empty space where his teddy bear used to be. His small fingers kept brushing against his lap as if searching for it. His eyes were wide and unsure, like a child walking in the dark. Miss Carter had taken the teddy away and placed it somewhere only she knew. Evan kept turning his head, hoping to spot it. But all he saw was the strict flight attendant moving up and down the aisle with a cold expression. Every time she passed his row, Evan's heart jumped. About 30 minutes later, she walked toward him again, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She stopped by his seat, arms folded tightly. "What now?" she said in a tone that sounded annoyed before he even spoke. Evan shook his head quickly. "And nothing." "Don't shake your head like that. Speak clearly," she demanded. Evan swallowed hard. "I'm not doing anything." Miss Carter leaned down. "You're doing something. You're sitting like you're going to cry. You're making the passengers uncomfortable." Evan blinked. I'm just sitting." Miss Carter smirked lightly, a cruel kind of smile. "You kids always think you know better." She reached out and lifted his chin roughly. "Look at me when I speak to you." Evan tried to pull back but didn't want to make her angry. His breath trembled. Nearby passengers now watched quietly, clearly uncomfortable. A man whispered to his wife, "That's too harsh. He's just a kid." But they still didn't say anything loud enough to stop her. Miss Carter moved behind Evan's seat and tightened his seatbelt again. This time even harsher than before. The belt dug into Evan's stomach, making him wince and breathe in sharply. "Ouch," he whispered softly. Miss Carter pretended she didn't hear him. "There. Now sit still. Don't move unless I say so." Evan nodded, biting his lip to stop it from shaking. She stepped away and walked toward the back again, her posture stiff and cold. Evan let out a shaky breath. His fingers quietly touched the sore marks forming on his belly where she had tightened the belt too much. His voice was barely a whisper. "I want to go home." A few minutes later, another flight attendant passed by, a younger woman with kind eyes. She noticed Evan's pale face and stopped. "Hey sweetheart, are you okay?" she asked gently. Evan quickly nodded, scared that Miss Carter might appear again. "You look a little uncomfortable," the woman said softly. "Are you feeling sick?" Evan wanted to say everything. He wanted to say he missed his teddy, that his stomach hurt, that he was scared. But the fear of Miss Carter's reaction kept him silent. "Oh, I'm fine," he lied. The young attendant studied his face for a moment, sensing something was wrong. But before she could say more, Miss Carter came marching down the aisle like a storm. "What are you doing here?" she snapped at the young attendant. The young woman stepped back. "I was just checking on him. He's fine," Miss Carter cut her off. "He just wants attention." The young attendant hesitated. "But he looks." "I said he's fine," Miss Carter repeated sharply. The younger woman looked uncomfortable, nodded quietly, and walked away. Evan watched her go, wishing she could stay. Miss Carter leaned toward Evan again. "Don't talk to other attendants. You talk too much." Evan's eyes widened in shock. "But I didn't talk. She spoke to me." Miss Carter slammed her hand on the seat beside his armrest, making him jump. "Don't argue with me." Passengers gasped softly at the sudden noise. Miss Carter straightened up and pointed her finger at Evan. "You're going to sit here quietly for the rest of the flight. If you cause even a little trouble, I will make sure you regret it. Understand?" Evan nodded quickly, tears rising but not falling. "Good," she said, turning away. Once she left, Evan finally let a tear roll down his cheek. He wiped it quickly, afraid someone might see. His hands shook. His breath came in small, scared gasps. He missed his father. He missed his mother. He missed safety. He wasn't doing anything wrong, but he felt like the entire world had turned against him. Nearby, a woman whispered to her husband, "That attendant is going too far." Her husband nodded. "This isn't normal." Still no one dared to speak out loud. Miss Carter's confidence and strictness scared them too. As time passed, Evan sank deeper into the seat. His stomach hurt from the tight belt. His hands were cold. His small body looked tired, too tired for a child his age. Miss Carter watched him from the front of the cabin, her eyes steady and unfriendly. The passengers didn't know what she would do next. Evan didn't know how much more he could handle. And far away in another city, his father still believed his son was safe on the flight. He had no idea the nightmare happening above the clouds. So, very soon, someone on the plane would expose everything. The airplane continued moving smoothly through the clouds, but inside Evan's heart, everything felt heavy and painful. He sat completely still, afraid that even breathing too loudly would make Miss Carter angry again. His small fingers twisted together on his lap, and he kept swallowing back the fear building in his chest. He wished he could disappear. He wished he was anywhere but this plane. Evan looked out the window. The sky was bright, full of white clouds and sunlight. It looked peaceful, nothing like what he was feeling inside. He blinked slowly and another small tear escaped down his cheek. He wiped it quickly with the sleeve of his shirt. He didn't want anyone to think he was weak. As the minutes passed, his mind drifted to memories he tried to keep hidden. A few months ago, Evan's world had changed forever. He remembered his mother's warm hands, her soft voice telling him bedtime stories, and the way she always hugged him before he went to sleep. She was gentle, loving, and always knew how to make him smile. But then one day she got sick. Very sick. Evan remembered sitting next to her hospital bed, holding her hand tightly. She had looked at him with tired but loving eyes. "Be brave, my little hero," she had whispered. "I may not always be here, but my love will stay with you forever." Those were her last words to him. Evan had cried silently, burying his face in the blanket, wishing he could stop time. After she passed away, everything changed. His father became busier than ever. Not because he didn't care, but because he was drowning in work, trying to distract himself from the pain. He cried when he thought Evan wasn't watching, but Evan always saw. They were both hurting. And now, on this plane with no one beside him, that sadness returned like a storm. He missed his mother today more than ever. A soft voice broke his thoughts. "Hey, are you okay?" Evan looked up. It was the same young female attendant from earlier. She was kneeling beside him quietly, making sure Miss Carter wasn't nearby. Evan quickly wiped his eyes again. "I'm fine." She tilted her head gently. "Are you sure? You look a little pale." Evan hesitated. His lips pressed together. He wanted to tell her everything, but fear locked his words inside his throat. "I'm just tired," he whispered. She gave him a sad smile. "Flying alone is tough, huh?" Evan nodded. "Where are your parents?" she asked kindly. "My dad, he's waiting for me," Evan said softly. "My mom," he paused. The words felt heavy. "She's not here anymore." The young attendant's expression softened even more. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart." Evan looked down again. "It's okay." Before the young attendant could say more, heels clicked loudly behind them. Miss Carter. Her face was cold and sharp. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. The younger attendant stood quickly. "I was just checking." "I told you earlier," Miss Carter snapped. "He is fine. Go to your job." The younger woman looked torn, but she stepped away slowly. Miss Carter then turned her attention to Evan. "You think you can make people feel sorry for you?" she hissed quietly. "You think crying will get you special attention?" Evan's eyes widened in fear. "No. I wasn't." "Don't lie to me," she whispered harshly. "You better not cause trouble again." Evan froze. His breath got stuck in his throat. Miss Carter walked away, her back stiff and angry. Evan felt his chest tighten. He took small, shaky breaths, trying not to cry again. His head drooped and his vision blurred. The pressure of everything, his mother's memory, the loneliness, the harsh treatment, felt too much. He hugged himself, wishing he had his teddy bear. That little stuffed toy was the last gift from his mother. It was the one thing that made him feel like she was still with him. Now it was gone. Taken by someone who didn't even care. The passengers around Evan whispered again. "That woman is cruel. That boy looks terrified. We should do something." But still, no one did. No one wanted to challenge Miss Carter. She walked with too much authority. Too much confidence. Too much power. And Evan was just a quiet little boy with no one beside him. His stomach hurt from the tight belt. His wrists hurt where she had grabbed him. His heart hurt the most. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes, trying to imagine his father waiting at the airport. He pictured his dad smiling, kneeling down to hug him tightly. "You did great," his father's voice said in his imagination. "I'm proud of you, son." Evan held on to that small daydream like a lifeline. He had no idea that someone on the plane had already noticed too much. And very soon, someone was going to expose everything. This plane was no longer safe for him. But his father? His father was about to find out. And when he did, no one on this flight would forget what happened next. Evan sat in his seat, trying to make himself as small as possible. He hugged his arms around his chest, staring down at the floor. He hoped the rest of the flight would stay quiet, but deep inside he knew Miss Carter was not finished with him. Every time she passed by, he felt her cold eyes watching him, judging him, waiting for him to make one tiny mistake. He kept holding his breath whenever she walked near. A little girl sitting across the aisle watched him carefully. She looked about the same age as Evan, maybe 7 or 8. Her curly hair bounced slightly every time she moved. She leaned toward her mother and whispered, "Mom, why does that boy look so sad?" Her mother sighed softly. "Sweetheart, sometimes adults forget how to be kind." The mother looked at Evan with sympathy, but like everyone else, she didn't dare to stand up yet. Fear had spread across the entire cabin. No one wanted to become Miss Carter's next target. Suddenly, the plane shook slightly due to mild turbulence. The seatbelt sign blinked above the passengers. The captain's calm voice came through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We expect light turbulence for a few minutes." The passengers settled down. Everyone except Miss Carter. She marched down the aisle, her expression sharp and annoyed. "Evan," she said in a low but threatening voice, "sit up straight." He nodded quickly and adjusted himself, even though he wasn't doing anything wrong. She checked his seatbelt again, pulling it hard. Too hard. It pressed painfully into his stomach. "Ow," Evan whispered. "Stop complaining," she snapped. "This is for your own safety." Evan bit his lip. His small face scrunched with pain. But he didn't argue. He couldn't. The turbulence grew a little stronger. The plane shook again. Evan held onto the armrest tightly. He didn't like turbulence. It made him feel even more scared. Miss Carter, however, didn't seem scared. She seemed annoyed, like everything around her was a problem she needed to crush. A water bottle rolled onto the aisle from another row. A man reached down to grab it, but before he could, Miss Carter scolded him. "Sir, keep your belongings secured. Don't make extra work for us." The man frowned. "It just fell. Follow instructions next time," she snapped and walked away. Passengers exchanged glances, shocked. How could someone be so rude? But when she glanced at Evan again, her anger deepened. As if seeing him breathe was enough to upset her. The young flight attendant from earlier watched all this quietly from the galley. She clenched her hands nervously. She wanted to help Evan, but Miss Carter was her supervisor. If she upset her, she could lose her job. Still, she couldn't stay silent forever. She took a deep breath and approached another flight attendant. "Alex," she whispered, "I really think we should report Miss Carter's behavior. That boy is terrified." Alex shook his head quickly. "Don't get involved. You know she has seniority. She'll make your life miserable." "But the boy." Alex sighed. "I know, but we need to stay out of it." The young attendant felt her heart sink. Was a job really more important than a child's safety? Back in his seat, Evan felt the plane stabilize again, but his heart was still beating fast. He whispered to himself softly. "It's okay, it's almost over. Dad is waiting." His voice was small, trembling. The little girl across the aisle watched him again. She couldn't stay quiet anymore. She leaned over and whispered gently. "Hi, do you want a snack? I have cookies." Evan's eyes widened in surprise. He shook his head quickly. "No, thank you." Before the girl could say anything else, Miss Carter turned sharply toward them. "What is going on here?" she snapped. The girl gasped and hid behind her mother, who frowned at Miss Carter. "He wasn't doing anything," the mother said firmly. "My daughter was just trying to be kind." "Well, passengers should focus on safety right now," Miss Carter said coldly. "Not chatting." The mother glared at her. "You don't have to speak to children like that." Miss Carter stepped closer, towering over her. "I expect cooperation on my flight." The tension grew thick in the air. Everyone watched. But once again, no one pushed further. No one challenged her. Except one person sitting silently a few rows back. A middle-aged man with a laptop on his lap. He had seen everything. And he had recorded everything. He zoomed his phone quietly, making sure he captured Miss Carter's behavior. His expression was serious. He wasn't just a normal passenger. He was one of the airline's internal auditors, someone who evaluated staff behavior. And he had more power than anyone on that plane realized. He looked at Evan's frightened face. Then at the cruel way Miss Carter stood over him. And he knew he couldn't stay silent. Not anymore. He closed his laptop, put it away and stood up slowly. Something was about to change. Something big. The calm before the storm had ended. The cabin felt different now. Heavier. Like everyone could sense that something was building, even if they didn't know what it was. Evan sat still in his seat, trying to breathe slowly. His fingers trembled as he held the armrest. He could feel Miss Carter's presence behind him, even when she wasn't looking his way. Every time her heels clicked on the floor, every time her shadow passed by, his heart jumped. But he didn't know that someone else was watching just as closely. The internal auditor, Mr. Harris, stood quietly near the exit door, pretending to stretch. But in reality, his eyes were fixed on Miss Carter. His phone stayed in his hand. He had more than enough evidence now. Her yelling, her aggression toward a child, her threats to passengers. He had recorded it all. And he wasn't going to let her get away with it. Miss Carter walked toward the back of the plane, her steps sharp and angry. She knew passengers were looking at her differently now, whispering, judging. It made her furious. "What do they know?" she muttered under her breath. "They don't understand my job. They don't know the pressure." She slammed a cabinet door shut in the galley. A young attendant flinched at the sound. Miss Carter turned toward her. "Why do you keep shaking? Are you afraid of me?" The young attendant swallowed hard. "No, I just..." "Focus on your work," Miss Carter snapped. "We can't have weak staff on this flight." The girl lowered her eyes. Inside, she felt her stomach twist. She had joined this job because she loved helping people. But days like this made her question everything. Meanwhile, Evan tried to distract himself by looking out the window. The clouds outside were soft and white, floating peacefully. So different from what he felt inside. He whispered again, "Please come fast, Dad." His voice cracked. He tried wiping his tears before anyone noticed. But someone did notice. The young girl across the aisle peeked from her seat. She made a small drawing with crayons, a sun with a smiling face, and slowly slid it across the aisle toward him. Evan looked at the drawing, surprised. He mouthed, "Thank you." It was a tiny moment of kindness, but it meant everything to him. The little girl's mother watched quietly and smiled. Finally, someone showed him warmth. Back in the aisle, Mr. Harris slowly walked toward the front, making sure Miss Carter saw him. She straightened her posture immediately. She knew he looked official. "Is everything all right, sir?" she asked with a fake smile. "Yes," he replied calmly. "But I need to talk to you, privately." Her smile twitched. She didn't like the tone in his voice. But she nodded and followed him to the front corner of the cabin. "What's the issue?" she asked. Mr. Harris looked straight into her eyes. "I need to understand why you have been mistreating a minor passenger." Her heart dropped. "Excuse me?" she snapped. "I've seen everything," he said. "And I have recorded proof." Miss Carter's fake confidence cracked. "You can't record staff. That's against Pol." "It's allowed," he interrupted. "Especially for internal investigation." Her eyes widened. She stepped back. You're with the airline?" "Internal audit," he said firmly. "And what I saw today is not only unprofessional. It's dangerous." Her breath hitched. She suddenly looked smaller, weaker. "No, you're misunderstanding," she stammered. "The boy, he kept causing problems." "What problems?" he pressed. He sat quietly the entire time. Her face turned red. Her words tangled together. He wasn't following safety instructions." Mr. Harris shook his head. "I watched everything. The only unsafe person here was you." Her hands trembled. She tried one last time. "You don't understand. These children make flights difficult. And the others, they don't respect me." "Respect is earned," he said coldly. "And today you earn nothing." She froze. "After we land," he continued, "I'll be speaking to the airline director. You will face disciplinary review." Her throat tightened. For the first time, fear filled her eyes. "What will happen to me?" she whispered. "That depends on how you behave for the rest of this flight," he said. Then he walked away. She stood still, breathing fast. Her world felt like it was collapsing. But she didn't know the biggest shock was still ahead. Evan sat quietly when he saw Mr. Harris walking toward his row. The man knelt beside him gently. "Hey, buddy," he said softly. "Are you okay?" Evan shook his head slowly. Mr. Harris placed a comforting hand on the seat. "You've been very brave. And I promise, she won't hurt you again." Evan blinked up at him, confused. Nobody had spoken kindly to him since Miss Carter started. Mr. Harris smiled gently. "Your father is waiting at the airport. We already informed him. He's on his way to the gate." Evan's eyes widened with relief and fear mixed together. "My dad?" he whispered. "He knows?" "Yes," Mr. Harris said. "And he is not happy." Evan's heart pounded. Not because his father would be angry at him, but because he knew what Miss Carter would face when his dad arrived. She didn't know who his father really was. She didn't know the power he had. She didn't know that she had messed with the wrong child. And the moment the plane landed, everything would change. The airplane slowly began its descent. The captain's calm voice came over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we will be landing shortly. Please fasten your seatbelts and prepare for arrival." The passengers relaxed a little. But Evan, he felt more nervous than before. His small hands tightened around his backpack. He kept thinking about what Mr. Harris said. "Your father is waiting. He knows everything." A mix of relief and fear filled his chest. He wanted to see his dad, but he also knew. When his dad was angry, nothing could stop him. Miss Carter, on the other hand, felt like she was walking on broken glass. Her confidence was shattered. Her hands trembled every time she adjusted a passenger's seatbelt. She kept glancing at Mr. Harris, terrified that he would record more. Her mind raced. What if I lose my job? What if they suspend me? What if they fire me? For the first time on that flight, she understood what fear felt like. But she still didn't know who she had messed with. Not yet. The plane dropped slightly as it prepared to land. A few passengers gasped. Evan held the armrest tightly. The little girl across the aisle whispered, "It's okay. We're almost there." Her mother smiled kindly at Evan. "You're very brave," she told him softly. He nodded even though his heart was beating fast. He kept imagining his father waiting outside. Tall, serious, powerful. Would he yell? Would he confront the flight attendant? Would something worse happen? Evan didn't know. He just knew his father's anger could silence an entire room. As the wheels touched the runway, a loud thump filled the cabin. The plane shook for a few seconds, then slowly rolled forward. Passengers began clapping softly, a habit many had after safe landings. But the tension didn't go away. Everyone knew something dramatic had happened during the flight. Everyone felt the storm waiting outside. Miss Carter forced a smile as the plane slowed to a stop. "Welcome to your destination," she announced shakily. "Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign turns off." Her voice cracked slightly and people noticed. She felt helpless, powerless, like she was no longer in control. She peeked at Evan. For a moment, she almost looked sorry. Almost. When the seatbelt light finally turned off, passengers began standing and grabbing their bags. Many of them avoided looking at her. A few stared with judgment in their eyes. Whispers floated around the cabin. "That poor kid. She was too harsh. Someone should report her. Did you see what she did?" Miss Carter felt sweat forming on her forehead. She had ruined everything. And she couldn't take it back. Evan stayed seated. He didn't want to rush out like the others. Mr. Harris told him, "Your father will meet you at the gate. I'll walk with you." Evan nodded quietly. He appreciated the man's kindness. The young flight attendant approached him too. She leaned down, speaking softly. "I'm really sorry about everything," she whispered. "You didn't deserve that." Evan gave her a small, shy smile. "It's okay." But she shook her head. "No, it's not." Her eyes looked sad, like she blamed herself for not helping earlier. Miss Carter watched from the front of the plane. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest. She knew she had to face the boy's father. She knew she couldn't hide. Her legs felt heavy as she stood near the door. Passengers walked past her, some shaking their heads, some glaring, some whispering to each other. She kept her eyes down. Shame covered her like a heavy blanket. Finally the aisle cleared. Only Evan, Mr. Harris, and Miss Carter were left. "Come on," Mr. Harris said gently. "Your father is waiting." Evan stood up slowly. He hugged his backpack tightly. His small steps echoed through the empty aircraft. Miss Carter swallowed nervously. She stepped forward. "Evan," she said softly, "before you go, I want to say..." But she couldn't finish. She didn't know how to apologize, or if she even had the right to. Evan looked at her with big, tired eyes. He didn't speak. He just turned away. And that simple action hurt her more than any words ever could. They stepped out of the airplane. The jet bridge was quiet. Cool air rushed around them. And standing at the end of the walkway was a tall, powerful man in a sharp suit. His presence filled the entire space. People walking past him slowed down, staring. Even airport staff straightened their posture. His eyes were locked on Evan. His expression was dark, controlled, but filled with fire. Evan's father. Visio. The man Miss Carter should never have angered. He took one step forward. Then another. The entire atmosphere changed. Even without speaking, everyone could feel his authority. Miss Carter's breath stopped. Mr. Harris stiffened. Evan's heart pounded. And the CEO finally spoke. His voice was calm, but ice cold. "Where is the person who hurt my son?" Everything was about to explode. The jet bridge felt silent when Evan's father stepped forward. He was a tall man with sharp eyes and a calm but dangerous presence. His expensive suit, polished shoes, and confident posture made it clear. This man was powerful. This man was respected. And this man was angry. Evan held his backpack tightly as he walked closer. His father knelt down and opened his arms. Evan rushed into them. The CEO hugged his son tightly, one hand on Evan's back, the other on his head. For a moment he said nothing, his silence more powerful than any words. Then he whispered, "I'm here now. You're safe." Evan's eyes watered. His small arms wrapped around his father's neck. He didn't want to let go. Miss Carter stood frozen a few steps away. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it echo in her own ears. She had seen angry passengers before. She had even argued with many. But this man was different. He had the type of authority that could silence a room without speaking. She took a step back without realizing it. Mr. Harris stood beside Evan and his father. He cleared his throat and said softly, "Sir, I believe you should hear what happened during the flight." The CEO slowly stood up, his hand still protectively on Evan's shoulder. "Tell me." Mr. Harris didn't hold back. He explained everything clearly. How Miss Carter yelled at Evan. How she pulled his seatbelt too tight. How she scared him. How she humiliated other passengers. How she created fear in the entire cabin. How she abused her authority. He even showed the recorded videos. Passengers who were walking out slowed down, listening. Some stopped entirely. Miss Carter felt her legs weaken. She shook her head in disbelief. No, that's not what happened." The CEO raised one hand. "Stop." Just that one word made her fall silent. He stepped closer to her, his expression unreadable. "My son is 8 years old," he said quietly. "He is polite. He is calm. He never causes trouble." Miss Carter swallowed hard. "And you," he continued, "chose to hurt him?" Her lips trembled. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was trying to maintain control of the cabin." "That is not control," he said. "That is cruelty." His voice was still calm, but heavy, sharp, and full of disappointment. Tears gathered in her eyes. She had faced angry customers before. Shouting, complaints, arguments. But this was different. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't insulting her. His calm, controlled anger was worse. It was the anger of someone powerful. Someone who could end her career with a single call. The little girl from the flight walked forward suddenly, holding her mother's hand. "Sir," she said softly, "the lady was very mean to him. He didn't do anything." Her mother nodded. "We all saw it. She crossed the line." Several passengers agreed. "She scared my kids too," one father said. "She threatened me for no reason," another whispered. Her behavior was not normal. Miss Carter felt her world collapsing piece by piece. Every whisper stabbed her. Every comment broke her confidence. She stepped back until her back hit the wall. I didn't mean. It wasn't supposed to. I'm sorry." Her voice cracked as she tried to speak. The CEO looked at her with cold eyes. "Sorry?" he repeated quietly. "Say it to the person you hurt." Miss Carter turned slowly toward Evan. He stood holding his father's hand, his small face sad and tired. She opened her mouth. Her voice barely came out. "Oh, I'm sorry, Evan." Evan didn't respond. He just looked at her. Not with anger. Not with hate. But with hurt. And that expression alone crushed her more than any insult. The CEO turned to Mr. Harris. "Please notify the airline director," he said calmly. "This is not a simple complaint. This is a formal report." Mr. Harris nodded. "I already have, sir. The director is expecting you both in his office." Miss Carter felt like she couldn't breathe. Director's office? Internal audit? Formal report? Her career. Her reputation. Her entire life. It was slipping away. The CEO then looked at his son. "Evan," he said softly, "do you want to speak?" Evan looked up at his father, then at Miss Carter. His voice was small, shaky. "You scared me?" Miss Carter felt tears fall down her cheeks. I didn't mean to," she whispered. "But you did," Evan said. "And you didn't stop." The simplicity of his words felt like a slap. The truth from a child was more powerful than anything else. An airport security officer approached. "Sir, we received reports. Do you need assistance?" The CEO shook his head calmly. "No. I only want the airline management informed. He turned to Miss Carter one last time. You should reflect on what you did. A position with authority is not a weapon. She lowered her head, crying silently. Passengers watched silently as the CEO guided Evan away. Everyone could feel the weight of the moment. The father's protective arm around his son. Evan leaning against him for comfort. Miss Carter standing alone, broken by her own choices. It was a scene no one would forget. As they walked toward the exit, Evan's father looked down at him. You did nothing wrong, he said gently. And no one will ever treat you like that again. Evan nodded, finally feeling safe. He slipped his hand into his father's. Together they walked toward a brighter place, away from fear, away from pain. Behind them the truth echoed through the jet bridge. A truth no one could ignore. Justice had finally arrived. And nothing would ever be the same.